Hey everybody, this is Richard from GunsHolstersAndGear.com. Today I want to briefly review the Diamondback DB9. The DB9 is a single stack 9mm pistol on a polymer frame. It's Diamondback's first entry into the 9mm market, and it comes at a time when there are a lot of people introducing these very small, very thin 9mm subcompact guns for the concealed carry market. The DB9 is a double action only gun. It is striker fired, and there are no external controls whatsoever on this pistol. There's no slide stop, there's no safety or anything else. The gun, from the factory, Diamondback says that the trigger should be about 5 pounds. I measured it and averaged 10 trigger pulls, and that was after a trip to the range and after doing some dry firing to kind of work out any burrs or any imperfections in the trigger. I measured actually 6 pounds 9 ounces, which is considerably more than what is advertised. However, it is a very smooth trigger. Compared to the Ruger LCP, I think that it's a much better trigger than the LCP. Also comparing it to the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 380, infinitely better than that Smith & Wesson. I love Smith guns, but the trigger on that Bodyguard is pretty awful. It's so long you can actually stop halfway through, get yourself some lunch, and then come back to it. It's pretty awful. The trigger on the Diamondback is actually very good. I liked it a lot. It is a single stack magazine, of course, to maintain its thinness. It carries 6 rounds of the 9mm ammo in the magazine, plus, of course, 1 in the chamber, giving you a total of 7 rounds. Considering it's 9mm ammo, that's actually quite a bit of an improvement over some of the other subcompact guns, like, for example, the LCP. The ammunition selection is somewhat limited in that the Diamondback is only rated for standard pressure ammunition. In other words, the higher pressure plus P and plus P plus loads are not going to be appropriate for it. Will they fire in this gun? Yeah, probably. But they will also wear the gun out much quicker. And Diamondback states specifically that if you fire those types of rounds in this gun, that you will void your warranty. I can only imagine that the gun, to achieve its really compact size, had to make some compromises, and I guess that's what a handgun is anyway, it's just a compromise. But to get the small size, they had to make some compromises in durability, and hence the high pressure rounds are probably going to wear this gun out very, very quickly. So it may be a situation, if you're not that worried about your warranty, that you practice with the standard pressure, but then maybe carry a magazine of the higher pressure rounds in here. Completely up to you. I will say, however, that there are plenty of standard pressure rounds that are suitable for self-defense. I know Federal makes their HST in a standard pressure 124 grain load. They also do the HydroShock in a standard pressure 124 grain. Spear does their Gold Dot in a 115 and a 124 grain, both of those standard pressure. I'm fairly certain that Winchester and Remington have similar loadings. I think Corbon actually makes a DPX round. I think it's a 90 or a 95 grain. That's a standard pressure. So there's definitely plenty of good rounds out there. And of course, we're talking about the premium stuff, but there's plenty of the more expensive, more conventional jacketed hollow points that are available also in standard pressures. One other thing about ammunition is Diamondback does say that the 147 grain rounds, or I should say that they specifically state that anything greater than a 124 grain bullet is not recommended for the firearm. Now, that could be for one of several reasons, one of which is that those rounds tend to be a little longer. So it could be some of the tolerances inside the longer 9mm round maybe won't feed reliably. Or it could be that those rounds also generate typically less slide velocity. And the recoil spring on the DB9 is quite stout, so it may be that those can't reliably generate enough slide velocity to cycle the ammunition. Regardless, stick with a 115 or 124 grain standard pressure round and you'll be fine. Of course, those rounds also favor very well against the 380 rounds, and the 38 special rounds are typically found in this size handgun. So even with the standard pressure rounds, I think you're definitely stepping up from one of those others. Real briefly, the gun feels pretty good in my hand. It is very, very thin. It measures only 0.8 inches wide, so it conceals very well in the pocket, but it's still big enough that it feels pretty decent in my hand. The magazine base that I have on this gun has a slight pinky extension, which actually makes a great deal of difference when shooting it. It really gives you a little better control on the gun, but yet it only adds, I don't know, maybe a quarter of an inch to the length of the pistol. It's definitely worth it in my mind. When I had this out on the range, I was a little concerned that recoil might be a bit stout, and it's probably not going to be the best gun for the novice shooter because there is recoil there, but the recoil is actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I actually found that the recoil was better than the Taurus DB9, the Taurus 709, also known as their Slim, which is a subcompact 9mm. I thought it was better than the Taurus. I also felt that it was actually slightly better than the Ruger LCP, which is just a 380 pistol. I don't know why that is. I can only imagine it's because maybe the size of the DB9 is slightly larger. It gives you a better grip on the gun, and so maybe it's not bouncing around as much. But that was what I kind of took back from the range. I also found that the DB9 was very reliable. All the different kinds of ammo I threw through it, it digested it fine. There was no problems. I didn't have any stoppages or malfunctions or anything. I was very impressed by that. Sights are definitely much improved over something like the Ruger LCP, which just barely has a bump on the front end. The sights on the DB9 are actually a hard plastic. They are, the front sight is fixed, the rear is windage adjustable, it's dovetailed in. They're not anything superior, but they actually are better than what you find on a lot of these real small guns. They're very usable. Given my druthers, I'd rather have something like what Carr puts on their subcompact guns, but like I said, this is a vast improvement over the LCP. The gun is a little slow to reload, and the reason why is it has a recessed magazine release, which is probably pretty good in that while you're carrying it in a pocket or on an ankle or wherever, you're unlikely to accidentally release your magazine, which obviously would be bad. But it also makes it a little difficult for you to swap out a magazine, especially if you're under stress in a self-defense situation. So in my mind, the DB9 makes for a perfect backup gun to a full-size or a larger concealed carry gun. If you're a cop working the street, this probably would make an excellent backup gun for you as well. It's something that I think you should probably just plan on having the 7 rounds, and if you can carry an extra magazine, do so, but just with the understanding that it's going to be very slow to reload. It's going to be difficult to do under pressure. Anyway, this is just a kind of a brief overview. If you want to see my complete review, go over to gunsholstersandgear.com. And if you're catching this early, it'll be right there on the main page. If you're catching this in a few weeks or a few months from now, just type in Diamondback DB9 review into the search bar and it'll take you right there.